All right, friends, welcome back to another exciting, wonderful edition of My Friends Like Cool Shit. As I teased last week with Amy, I'm here with Dan, and we're going to talk his journey through discovering Harry Potter as an adult with his child, uh, and of course, handling the JK Rowlings of it all. So, Dan, you have three advantages that I will not have in how you've experienced this. First, being that you're experiencing the movies before the books, you're experiencing them as an adult, and you're experiencing them for the first time with your child. Uh, First off, what made you decide to watch the Harry Potters with Zoe?
Um, so birthday parties are a thing again. COVID kind of took those away, but her group of friends, from daycare, soccer, and stuff, had birthday parties every year, all around the same time. So it's like we're all seeing each other every weekend for them. And she went to two Harry Potter themed birthday parties. All the kids at school are into it. She was chosen by the hat on numerous occasions, and she had yet to see any Harry Potter. And the final straw was when we went to our friend Jessica's house, or her parents' house, with Rich Grupka from the comic community, all that stuff. And Jessica's sister Christy, also a dear friend, is a huge Harry Potter head, and Zoe adores her. So the second Zoe showed the least bit of interest, Christy just took that and made Zoe a fan without ever seeing any Harry Potter, which led to us going home and watching all of the Harry Potters. We were at what they call Oktoberfest. It's their German fest, which is a blast. And all we wanted to talk was Harry Potter. And there were long Harry Potter talks, and I was a few seltzers deep, more than a few. And so I made a promise to her that we would watch all of them. And I slowly and casually dragged my wife into this agreement as well, so we'd experience it together. And here we are, a week removed from finishing all of the movies within a week.
It was interesting knowing who you are. First, like that you were starting them kind of caught me off guard, but then like to see your posts both on Facebook and Twitter about them, I know it was hard not to. I was like, oh, let me let him get through these before I engage him in some of the other topics. But how did that weigh on you, knowing like what we've discovered about JK Rowlings heading into this?
JK Rowling's a shit human, and that's why I really, I had at one point, we go to these themed birthday parties, and I just sit there and judge in my mind. I don't say anything. I'm not trying to shit on a kid's birthday party. I'm like, we should not be supporting this. But as we've seen throughout the years, and we've talked about on Battle of the Bells and stuff, when do we separate the artist from the art? And I personally don't. I'm like an all or nothing kind of guy. But at some point, we get to the point where it's everybody's got skeletons and shit comes to light. And if we write everybody off, you lose some of the stuff, the wonderment that was there. And I actually have a dear friend who's trans, and Harry Potter actually helped them explore themselves in a way where they were comfortable with that. And so, I mean, my feelings aside, imagine how much of a shock they were in for when they were on JK's Twitter and all that shit, seeing everything for the first time. And they were the ones who said, regardless, it was a piece of therapy for me. I don't care about the person who wrote it. I care about what it was for me, like that transformation, that journey. And so that made it easier for me to put it aside. Do I own any of the books in my house? No. Will I buy them knowing that JK will get proceeds? No. But if I'm at a local thrift shop or a local bookstore and they have them, they'll get my nickels, they'll get my dollars. I believe firmly in reading, and to be honest, if anything's going to engage my child in reading, I'm going to encourage it regardless of my personal feelings, and we also, she heard me talking to people at this party because you get some seltzers in me, and all of a sudden Worldly Dan comes out and she heard what I was saying, and we had to talk about what the writer represents now and who they are, and I gotta be honest, if a 9-year-old can get it, I wish adults could, but we have those talks. And so it actually introduced us to some talks that I plan to have with her down the line. But she's also a kid who doesn't need to have those talks. She just embraces and loves everybody. So she's not like, hey, somebody might be a little different, have a different experience, you should love them. She's just like, I don't care about that. I just want to hear about their journey kind of person already at 9. So fuck JK. It was tough for me. And, it was hard to grapple with that. Hence why we still don't have the books in the house. But that was a tough one for me, and that's one of the reasons why when all of her friends were watching Harry Potter and having Harry Potter sleepovers, I was saying no, but then I realized I was depriving my child of an experience that could potentially be beneficial as well.
Yeah, and when I was like watching from afar, you doing this, like having watched Zoe grow up through social media, it never once crossed my head that you guys wouldn't be able to have the intelligent conversation about it, even at her age. So I was never worried about it. And the experience is something that's true. One of my sisters is going with her sister-in-law and their kids all down to Orlando, and my niece and nephew from this sister have been going to Disney for forever. It's I went to Animal Kingdom one year with them, and it's just fun to do. But they were too young to do Harry Potter back then. I went to Harry Potter with a friend the next day, but they're doing Harry Potter this year, and it's just kind of one of those like, I know my sister. Anyone who watched Kristen here on My Friends Like Cool Shit, even though it got interrupted, like she's such a loving, caring, and doting mother that there's no doubt in my mind that her kids are going to like know the right thing. They're both brilliant children in themselves. So it's one of those things like, yeah, Kristen's going to have the conversation she needs to have with these kids. And in the meantime, uh, Harry Potter down to Universal is so fucking fun. It really
You know, and
is.
I'm going to be honest, as somebody who hasn't read the books, watched the movies, it's clear there's a lot missing from them, but the message of the author is not anywhere near what the message is that I get out of these movies and stories. And it's mind blowing to me where it's like, is it a ruse? Is it just because, I know I can get prominence by clinging to this bullshit? Or is it a firmly held belief? Because it doesn't come through in writing. And I've often believed that like your writing is the most authentic version of yourself. And so I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying, is it a ruse or is this real? And at some point, did the ruse and reality just mix like a bad cocktail? And a shit human was born. Either way, I'll forever say fuck that author. But I will thank, I guess, the stories for helping so many. When my students found out that I was watching it, I have a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of transgender students, but I have a lot of LGBTQ students who are like, "Oh, you're watching it? Oh my god, it helped me in my journey." And so I'm like, somehow this big indirectly helped this group of people come to uh, a sense of being okay with themselves and making that transformation and coming out. And so I think that is the biggest fuck you as opposed to me not buying the books. And I love every second of it.
Yeah, and this is something we've talked about in a couple different conversations in a couple different forms of media too. Like JK Rowling is not a good author, and it kind
No,
of
not at
helped.
all.
It kind of helped these stories, and I know there's going to be people be like, "Oh no, those." No, JK Rowling is a basic at best author, and she created a wonderful world almost by mistake. And there's a reason there were multiple lawsuits against her for plagiarism. But that's not to take away from how magical this experience was for kids. As you know, I worked at Walden Books for many years. I worked midnight releases for the last two Harry Potter books. And it wasn't just kids, it was adults as well. But it was so crazy for the sixth book. I mean, Scholastic, we weren't allowed to open them until 11:59. And it was like if Scholastic heard about stores, there was a store in Canada that lost the right to sell any Harry Potter books whatsoever. Not just that release, but any books. So it was a big deal. So we can open at 11:59. So we've got the cases that have like do not open, the name of the book and everything behind our counter. And as we're emptying the boxes, people are like yelling to get the boxes as collector's items. So that was like the frenzy of it. I
The
grabbed
height of it, yeah.
I grabbed a couple for my sisters and mother, and I think they got long lost because what the hell are you going to do with a Harry Potter box? Like I'm sure someone sold them online for a lot of money, but it's kind of asinine to me. And then the next year, like it was amazing. I ran a is Snape friend or foe discussion, and I took the friends side, and I had 20 kids quoting the pages of the books to show that Snape was foe, not friend. And you and I have talked about my feelings about Snape. Like in that instance, yes, friend, but toxic person. And it's just kind of like it's was wonderful to hear all these kids, probably between the ages of like 8 and 12, quoting these quotes that just illustrated in my mind that, oh yeah, no, even though I'm arguing the friend side, he's a piece of shit. And of course, that doesn't come in through the movies. And I think Alan Rickman's portrayal is just so lovely. And he's one of those guys you hear him, you don't hear him anymore, but you read the quotes about him being Snape and what Harry Potter meant to him. And it meant a lot to him and his kids. So like he took the same kind of stuff that we've taken and the good stuff. So I'm kind of glad he's not here to see what J.K. Rowling has become, because
You know what's interesting is I was so far removed from Harry Potter, I didn't even know who was in it besides Daniel Radcliffe. Daniel Radcliffe. So like I see Robert Pattinson, I'm like, oh my dude. Like I had no idea these people were in these fucking movies. I knew Emma Watson, right? Yeah. But like I somehow Alan Rickman escaped me. Somehow like all these people escaped me. And so I'm like this journey was legit just original for me.
Which on the Alan Rickman, Snape aside, because I don't know if he's like Alan Rickman's become Snape for you, but what was the role you defined Alan Rickman as before this?
I honestly didn't define him with a role. It was more of who he was on sets. Like when you heard about people working with him, especially like after he passed, and you just heard about like all the stories of just how great he was to work with. That's what really got me. And I mean, along the years, you see him and he pops up and it's like, oh, there he is. I mean, we had Love Actually, one of my favorite movies. And I don't know. There's just these little dabs of Rickman, I guess you could say. I mean, I don't know how many people remember from Robin Hood, but
Robin Hood was the first time like I fell in love with Alan Rickman, but he became Marvin the Robot. So even when I reread the Hitchhiker's Guide stuff, I hear his voice, and I love the cast of that movie. I think they all were perfect for those roles. And I'm a huge Sam Rockwell fan, so I thought like I would have loved if they could have done the heads the way you envision it reading the books, where it's two next to each other.
Oh yeah,
I know they didn't have the budget to give two Sam Rockwell heads, but imagine that. But no one else became the character when I read the book except for Alan Rickman, and so he'll always be Marvin the Robot to me. And I'm kind of glad because it's kept the Snape in the book to not be Alan Rickman, because I would hate to dislike Alan Rickman as much as I dislike Snape. So.
But I mean, he's always tied to the Hans role too.
Yeah.
I guess for all those years, I'm like, wonder what Alan Rickman's doing. And he was just making Harry Potter movies. I had no, like legit, I was so disconnected. I'm not a big fan of magic. I don't like wizardry. That's just not I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. It's just not
it's not just wizardry. You don't like wizards, which is why the fact that you've embraced and loved this experience so much throws me off.
I hated it all so much. As much of a nerd as I am, I hate all that so much. So I've so ignored it where like a commercial come out, I would change the channel. Like I had groups of friends who were so enthralled with the series that like that's all they want to talk about. So I just stopped talking to them. It's crazy that I'm 20 years late to the party, I guess.
Yeah. At least. I think I was 12 when I first read the first three, 12 or 13. So
no joke. English class, I believe my senior year of high school, our teacher, who now, Mrs. Allen, if you're listening, and I know that you might be because we talk often on Facebook, I walked out of English class because instead of having us do some boring reading or something like that, she actually showed us the movie to try and get us engaged and talk about it. I was so I hate wizards so much. I don't know why. I was like, screw this. And I just walked out and I went and played in a gym class while I rewatched this movie. Like that's me in high school. So I'm way late to the party. And I'd like to think my tastes have evolved, but I really don't think they have. It's just this experience as a whole of as a family going through this journey, watching it with my daughter who's now obsessed with it, who I know people see on social media, but her drawing skills are like really solid actually for her age. And it's very artistic, and watching her just draw these Harry Potter things as she sees them, it's just been such an awesome experience beyond just watching the movies, but what it means to her of different elements of it, what she pulled from it. And when it ended, we had the same favorite characters, which was awesome too.
Yeah, I loved it was the Dobby wanted to think Harry Potter picture. Was that one? I loved that one she did, and it just made me think I'm excited for when she finally does get to the point where she's reading the books. Well, because as I told you, like the elf understory in that books, like if you've mentioned like the big three, Hermione is definitely the MVP of that.
Yeah.
When you get to the books, you're going to think so much better of Hermione, and you're going to think a little bit less of Ron. I'm not going to lie.
I'm more about Weasley's family than I am about Ron, to be honest. I like his parents. I dig
them. I think, and we've talked about this, like JK Rowling gave us really one-dimensional characters, and Ron's supposed to be the middle child who never lives up to anything. And that's definitely more portrayed in the book. And he does kind of get his moments, but they're downplayed, I think, more than they should. But he definitely does serve a purpose as he's a wizarding family through and through. And since he's looking for something, I mean, his brothers are their own men. Like
Right.
Fred and George are like fully formed characters, and they're probably the most fully formed characters right from the get-go, but they're troublemaking teens. Like that's an easy one to make fully formed. But Ron's just that guy who's looking for something, trying to discover himself. So he's a good foil to two people raised in the Muggle war world to help them discover the Wizarding world. And I will give that credit. And I think the trio works really well together in that sense. But I honestly, we kind of talked about this. I think the beauty of what this is there's so much that's not said about any of these characters. It's left to the imagination. That's the headcanon around Harry Potter is amazing. And I think the headcanon, as much as anything, is what's helped people cope. Like it's the way they're portraying these characters, not the way they are necessarily portrayed themselves.
You know, I gotta be honest, I was kind of proud when Zoe said that our house reminds her of the Weasley's residence. I was like, oh, I can get down with that because as somebody, you know, I moved out of my house at the age of 15. So like as somebody who was bouncing around houses and found my own Weasleys, you know, kind of like Harry does when it's time to get stuck with places. It's I appreciate that because I envision many friends of hers that will find that sort of home with us. I dig that a lot.
It's just weird to hear you like be happy you're compared to a wizard family. I don't think people understand. Not too long ago on No Coast Defenders, you went so far as to distance Doctor Strange from a wizard by saying he doesn't have a hat. That is your distaste of wizards, is you couldn't make the Sorcerer Supreme a wizard. Like
he's a sorcerer.
Yes, because those aren't synonyms. We should go get Zoe and ask her if a sorcerer and a wizard are the same thing.
Well, she says he's a doctor, so I'll let her get away with that too.
He is also a doctor.
He's not. He doesn't just play one on TV. He's a real doctor.
Yes, that is true.
I just, you know, the interesting stuff with all this, you know, I'm hating all that stuff for it, but we buckled in. You know, we watched the first one, and you know that I don't like long movies. Not at all. And it started where we were breaking them up, simply because it's always bedtime. You know, I couldn't let her stay up too late because, you know, school and orchestra and
she's always in bed on time.
Yeah. But she has that Muggle life she has to live, you know, on the 8 to 4. So so we started breaking the movies up, and then I realized, like, you know, we got to that, I think Thursday, Friday night, where we were on, I think it was the last 3. And I was like, no, screw it, we're pushing through, we're watching these. So I'm like encouraging us, let's sit through these 2-hour, 40-minute movies when I hate that length. My ideal length is about 100 minutes at the most. So I'm like saying, no, we're doing this. We're gonna sit through this, we're gonna get snacks, we're gonna hunker down, we're gonna start the next one. And that's just how good those stories were to me. But why don't you see where it goes? And to be honest, Harry was my least, one of the characters I like least. I don't give a shit about what happened with Harry. I gave a shit about the rest. And it's like, you have Voldemort there who doesn't really feel like a villain at all. I'm not saying he seems like a good guy, but he doesn't seem like the main villain. That's like coming to terms with yourself was the point of it. And so, like, I don't know, he felt really inconsequential to me, but like this journey is what it would just really seem to matter. And then, you know, my guy with his glow up at the end there, just coming through. And
you don't even know what your guy's name is.
Neville Longbottom.
Okay.
You know, like that to me, and I don't know how people who've read the books and all that stuff feel about when that scene happened. That made the entire movie series for me. That right there, didn't care about Harry, didn't care about any of that. Just a man Neville coming through, and that's, I don't know, it was pretty transformative there, and I think it showed. So I have a daughter who is very talented, very outspoken, but doesn't want to be the leader of the pack in terms of like who's focused on. And so like when that happened, I see her as a Neville, and I like that. Because she's not one of the big 3. She's one whose name will always be known, but she kind of stays in the back. You know, somebody says, hey, you're really good at that. She's like, oh, I'm never doing it again. She doesn't want that attention. So I really enjoyed that moment because she cheered. She was like, oh, like she was so excited because that was like her on screen. And that was just such an amazing scene for me.
Yeah. And I know we talked about how it kind of comes out of nowhere in the film, but in the movies, it's only slightly more built up. He gets the herbology stuff that is mentioned by Imposter Moody, that he's got a good hand at herbology, and we see that. But yeah, in the books, like him discovering herbology and having that talent for herbology is kind of what starts it, and then him being like close to Harry with the Dumbledore's army builds on it. But then, yeah, we hear nothing after the Dumbledore's army, and then all of a sudden he's been rebellious and leading the students in the school in year 7. So it is kind of nowhere, but I think that goes back to just how the headcanon comes into play, because now you can build up what Neville was doing and that stuff. You can imagine that growth for him. Would I have loved
Right.
to see it? Yeah. But I honestly don't know if it wouldn't have gotten screwed up if we got a detailed Neville plot.
I'm going to be honest, though, we know how I feel about JK. And so I did read the first chapter online of the first book. And I think I've read more riveting and English correct writing on the back of an Nabisco box than I did that story. But I just kind of want to prove it to see like what's in there, stuff like that. And obviously it's okay for somebody to read. So I'm going to eventually pick all these things up, local libraries and stuff like that. But I guess as a writing, somebody who majored in writing and did all that sort of stuff, when I'm reading these sort of things and I, currently like read and correct papers and stuff, I'm like, wow, this made it. But I think that might be a testament to the world building. Obviously I didn't go beyond that first chapter and stuff, but if the world building is half as good as what it is in the movies, then I'll give that a lot of credit. But stylistically, she's not a very good writer, but she clearly engaged many, probably 1 billion people into getting into it. So kudos for that. And I think I can just leave it at that.
Yeah, though the world building is, I think of her more of like a plot line person than an nitty gritty detail person. And I think that honestly helped the imagination of both kids and adults as they were experiencing both the movies and the books. Specifically, the number of kids I know who got into reading, like working and seeing the kids who bought Harry Potter and then moved on to other things. Whereas Twilight kind of had that for some teens, but I'm gonna lie, I sold that book to housewives more than I sold it to teen girls. Like, and kudos, like if it got you to read, that's always been my thing. Like if you're gonna read, I'm glad you're reading something.
If you can put a book in the hands of a kid or anybody, really, I'm all about it.
Yeah, exactly. I had one guy who I vaguely knew buying Captain America comic books and was always really shy about it, and I didn't understand why. So it was the Brubaker run with Winter Soldier resurrecting, leading up to the death of Captain America, and I was just like, oh man, this story's been so good. Brubaker is fantastic, and like the guy's face lit up, and so now we're just talking comics, and then he branched into other stuff. All of a sudden, he's like one of the better customers in the store, and so if like, however, like I feel about her personal politics, and honestly, not even politics, like her personal view of humanity.
Yeah, that's what it is for me.
Yeah, I think the
I
idea
give 2 shits about someone's politics, but
yeah, I think we need to lose the politics in from our vocabulary oftentimes, and this is one of those things. No matter how I feel about her personal view of humanity, like I saw the effect of the Harry Potter books on folks with my own eyes, like, and I'm happy that we've got all those readers, which, as you know, will be a problem for me when I have a bookstore, and I'm only hoping people bring them in used when I'm not carrying them new. So,
it's been cool for me to watch, I guess, my kids' journey. We don't get excited about the same stuff nearly as much as we used to. I mean, she had this stint where she was all about comic books, and then her friends weren't so much into comic books despite her efforts, and that wavered a little bit recently. And so we were able to connect on something else too. Like we both like watching funny fart videos, but that only goes so far. So to have something to connect over and put on and talk about, and there's a lot of like life lessons and stuff too. So it's just it was a good experience. And my wife, who cries, Lauren, she cries at everything. To watch her cry watching these films when we're just having some fun family time is also just showing how much it got to her for the experience. But
did you cry during any of the films? I guess is the question.
One.
Was it the death of Cedric Diggory?
No, I was pissed at that. They got my guy Diggy.
I mean, I've seen the movie dozens of times, but every time he comes back clutching Cedric's body and the cup in his hand, I cry.
That was Dobie, man. Dobie got me.
That one gets me as well.
That scene where he just so triumphant and matter of fact and made the world his own, and then that happened. That got me. That bummed me out a lot.
when they come into the castle and the Weasleys are, what is it? Is it Fred who passes? It's like Fred, Remus, and Tonks all laid out. That gets me every time. I'm like, and it's not touched upon nearly enough in the movie, but like the fact that Remus and Tonks have a young child at home, and that one gets me every time because I'm just like, shit, you just split up the twins. Now you just orphaned. That one gets me all the time. But you know me, I'm a big softie. I cry at a lot of things. So.
Yeah, I mean, when the moment arises, I never fight it back. But can we just talk about Helena Bonham Carter just being Helena Bonham Carter? Like, was she supposed to be in the movie, or did she just show up to set one day and they're like, "Hey, go do some shit"? You know, like it's somehow same character in every movie, but that character is just herself.
And she's so brilliant at it. Have you heard the quote about her wand with their kids?
No.
I guess, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something about that she has the wand, so anytime her kids misbehave, she can pull it out because she is like that. She is like the toned down version of that character. I think the most true representation of what I imagine her as a person is Sweeney Todd. Like that's just who I imagine she is. And I just feel like, and I think she was still with, I'm blanking out the director's name right now, and I can't believe I'm doing that.
Tim Burton?
Yeah, I think she was still with Tim Burton at the time. So it just feels like Johnny Depp was the Tim Burton stand-in in her like in her life. Because I mean, they've been paired together in a number of movies.
Right.
When you work with the same director together that many times, it's going to happen. But yeah, she's so good in this film. I just oftentimes just hear her skipping down, "I killed Sirius Black."
I had a lot of fun with it. You know, the casting was great, and I had a couple people point out, and I know it sounds bad, but I don't really like watching things with accents, and it's only because whatever my hearing, there's a disconnect between my hearing and understanding, like comprehension, and so I really struggle, and I have to focus on so hard. So I have got friends being like, "Wow, you watch them with all the British accents." I'm like, "Yeah, I know somehow it works," but like, there's always just been this like I have such a hard time deciphering what's being said, and even got past that too, where I didn't, you know, it was the dialogue was great. I can't figure out a way to articulate it. I know it sounds bad, but something about my hearing just doesn't lend itself to that, but it still worked with this. So I don't know if maybe the audio recording was much better than what I used to, but
what I'm hearing is you're ethnocentric, but you got over it because of your daughter.
Yeah, let's throw that one on Twitter. Because people have recommended shows. I'm like, yeah, I feel like the story is probably cool. I just don't know. I don't, there's like this processing thing that happens for me that there's just a lock. But I didn't need subtitles for this one. It was, you know, somehow clear for me. But it was an enjoyable journey, and I actually felt for a lot of these characters, which is, as you know, I watch things and I just watch them and watch them. But this was something I was fully invested in, so I really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, I wonder, because you know I have this theory about distractions while we're watching things. While you were watching it with Zoe and Lauren, were you doing anything else, or were you just watching the movie?
So when it comes to my family, there are a million pee breaks. So I was watching it contently until we had to stop it every 5 minutes for pee breaks or drinks or snacks. But all the live updates you saw from my phone were during the million of pee breaks.
Yeah,
that occurred. And no, I wasn't compelled to even look at my phone once, except the third movie. I did not like the third movie. I wasn't into it at all. It didn't engage me. I just didn't really care all that much.
That one was the Prisoner of Azkaban, right?
Yeah, and I know why it was important in the end. You know, I saw that in the end, but it still didn't make it matter in the moment for me.
That one, I think, is the biggest gap between the quality of the movie versus the quality of the book, too. Well, in the wrong way, because as I've told you, I think the last 4 movies are generally better than the last 3 books. So
I love how dark it got. Actually, people were surprised. You know, they're commenting and stuff like, "Wow, you like that? It's so dark." I'm like, no, it seemed like the logical place to go with all of it.
But I think when it started to get dark really with 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when they switched directors, because I think it was Chris Columbus for the first 3. And it would make sense that he would do something more lighthearted. I mean, this is the guy that brought us Home Alone. which is like sneakily dark, but not
Yeah.
too dark for your kids to not watch it and laugh. Because I mean, he killed those poor guys multiple times in Home Alone.
No, I really loved the change in the tone, and it seemed to fit, and it worked with the build up to Voldemort, like all that stuff. I just yeah, I mean the studio just handled it so well.
Yeah, and that is another thing I'll give the series credit for, including She Who Not Be Named, because the books aged up. So they were like intermediate to begin with, but by the last book, they were young adult books.
Yeah.
And of course, since I started at the cusp of young adult intermediate with them, and I was in my early 20s by the last one, the reader aged up more than the books did, but I think the books aged up with the characters.
Yeah, I don't know what to speak to that, but I'm hoping it did. And I know eventually Zoe and I'll get there. As I said, everybody harped on like read the book, read the book, read the book. Meditation is pretty much the attention span that I have now. It doesn't allow for book reading, so I really am going to get them on audio from the library. And I want to hear it, but I want to hear it with Zoe too, like we're in the car ride and stuff like that, going places. So it looks like we're going to have some traveling November, December. So I'm hoping to start listening to them then. Full disclosure, after I finished my thesis, my 170-page thesis, I never wanted to read again. And I took a very long break from reading simply because I had read through, I don't know how many thousands of scholarly articles and books and everything else. So reading no longer was fun to me. And currently comic books are kind of the only thing that are fun to me. So I did find out there are graphic novels of these. So if I'm ever thrift shopping or flea marketing and I see them, I'll grab them, but I will not buy them on Amazon or anything like that.
Right.
So that could be a cool entryway, but I'll definitely get them on audio so we can listen to them as we go and vibe, and we can pause Olivia Rodrigo for a few weeks and do some Harry Potter books, which is fine. In the car, only a few weeks though, because Olivia is a saint. But yeah, man, we're gonna get there. We're gonna check it out. I feel bad for everybody who ever says to me, like, read a book. I'm like, God, I'm the guy who says read a book and I can't sit through reading a book, but I feel that vibe. I love that vibe. I love other people reading.
How much I love books and how my life will one day be books, but
Mhm.
I'm in a slump where I'm not reading anything outside of book club. So I get it. And honestly, even some of the book club books, I'm taking 5 weeks to read a book that should take me 4 days. So it happens to, I think, most of us. I know some people I don't think ever hit a reading slump, and I'm happy for them, but some of us hit it and we hit it hard. Zoe's way into Harry Potter now. Has she expressed interest in anything similar? Is it going to branch her into some other fantasy books or?
Not really, but I think it's because she knows America Chavez is coming to Disney potentially, and so we're reading those comics and she's into that. The fantasy stuff, I want to say it'll probably come in the future, but given that her friends aren't into anything outside of the Potterverse, even Fantastic Beasts, I mentioned that, and she's like, eh. So, and then when we talked to my buddy Tim, who was here last night for football, and he said it's about the world, but not really connected to Harry Potter all that much. She lost interest even more. So, to be honest, if I can get this kid reading anything, I'm into it. So, she will pick up random stuff, want to read it. She's on Dogman right now, which is a little bit below her reading level, but she's getting through full books and loving the story. And then she's drawing pictures based on it. And
yeah,
I'll never stunt that creativity. We all have different philosophies, theories. She had a teacher a couple years ago who, amazing guy, he's battling cancer right now, but he, had said that whether it's a comic book or a cereal box of a child's reading, it's a win. And so I will always have that philosophy. It's always been my own philosophy. So whatever she wants to read, it's cool. She picked up a few comics I was selling in the claim sale I'm doing right now this week, and started reading them, and they're now in her box. So I had to delete them from the sale because she decided to read them. So I'll never stun her reading her creativity, whatever she's into, I'm for.
Yeah, I think one of my nephews was in a similar spot where he was reading, I think, the Big Nate books. And another family member is either Big Nate or Wimpy Kid. I mean, they're the same thing, basically. Another family mentioned and almost disparagingly, but not quite on disparaging, that they were a bit below his reading level. And he loved being read to as a kid, but I never saw him read too much. But now he's devouring these books, and I'm like, I don't care if he's reading a little critter to himself right now. Like he's, I'm like, find something he's interested in instead of worrying about the level it's at. Worry about him being interested in it.
You know, I mean, even Marvel has their kids line out, you know, the super action, the adventures and stuff like that. And I'm going to be honest, Gary B, the casual comic guy, and myself, we're talking. The Captain Marvel line is fantastic. That's aimed at freaking 10 to 15-year-olds. And I'm sitting here loving like every second of it, the Marvel action comics. So, you know, there's something for everybody and wherever we find it. And if reading can be had, if enjoyment can be had, and imagination can be stirred up, I'm all about it.
Yeah, especially not that just that she's reading, but the fact that she's drawing based on it too. Like it's gonna spur everything. So
yeah, we put her framed Adobe up, and she was pretty proud of that. So just, you know, this was a series that I was going in half-heartedly, like, yeah, we'll watch as a family, whatever. And I think that we were both in it just as much as each other, you know. And so she doesn't know it, but there's a Harry Potter advent calendar on the way that will be delivered on November 24th for her, so she can pop out a Funko character a day. And I got her Adobe Pop, you know, Funko Pop that I was going to surprise her with, and then that made her day. And she looks at it every day, and she talks about the sock. That sock scene really had such a lasting like imprint on her that she talks about it regularly, and like that's all she's drawing. And so I'm trying to get through like the psychological impact of that. Like that one moment is the moment that stood out to her through the entire series. That's the only one where it's like, what's your favorite part? Well, when Dobby gets a sock. So I love she's in touch with humanity, you know, that component, but there's also something else there to kind of look at. So
well, and that's the thing, I think, that regardless of anything else around Harry Potter, Harry is a caring character, Hermione is a caring character, and they're both in different ways, but those two both are always as characters thinking about someone else over themselves. And that's fully expressed in the sock. Like in the CGI on Dobby's face when he gets the sock, like Master has given Dobby a sock. Like you just like, there's so much, there's joy, sadness, relief, and kudos to the special effects team for making that character so full of life.
So you read my tweet, you read my post on social media where I was quoting them. And that was real time where I typed that, was so moved, typed it, and then fuck. When he died, like that swing of emotions there was I the only thing I can equate it to is I think it was like 7 years ago, the Packers were like a play away from going to the Super Bowl. And I typed, you know, wow, Packers going to Super Bowl. And then a play got called back and they didn't go. And I was like, I never felt so dejected. And the scene in that movie right there, I actually stood up and I walked into the kitchen and just kind of paced when that happened, because I was like, there's no way this is reality right now. And I'm experiencing this, like, I don't know how many years later after everybody else. I'm going through like all this like internal turmoil where I'm like, shut the movie off. I'm done. Shut it all off. That what was it, a 2-minute arc right there? I'm like, holy shit, they just did that to me.
Well, I think, not that I waited nearly as long as you to watch these movies, but I was so I saw most of them in theaters, but with the last two I didn't bother. And so I didn't watch the last two until one day. My brother and I may or may not have been hungover. I think Roy and Ashley were out of town, so there's no one in the house but us. So we just ordered food. I don't think Joe had, like, he'd crashed the night in the shorts he'd worn the night before, and it had drastically dropped in temperature, as fall days are wont to do. So he's in a pair of sweatpants of mine that are too big for him, with a hoodie of mine that's too big for him. And the first one was just on cable, or I guess the seventh one was on cable, the first of the last two. And I liked it more than I thought I was going to, because I was disappointed in the seventh book. I was disappointed in the sixth movie a little bit. Mm-hmm. We had to then rent the seventh one because I was like, yeah, no, I'm in. So I was a little hungover crying about Dobby dying the first time. So
That's brutal.
yeah, it's interesting to get that emotional over a CGI effect, but it is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
so now that you've experienced Harry Potter, something you thought you would probably never experience, what's the next grand adventure you're going to take decades later?
Still trying to find it. I was going to open it up for recommendations. And then I just said, I'm not ready to open those floodgates because Zoe knows too much. So I'm not completely sure yet, as there are many projects on the rise. I'm actually hoping to experience our next father-daughter journey with the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus. You know, Zoe loves the movie, she's into the stuff, but there hasn't been an ongoing series that she got into. So I'm hoping with that one, you know, with the dynamics of those relationships and stuff, that we'll find one there. In terms of Blast from the Past, I'm really not quite sure. You know, I've tried to introduce her to certain things, and it's just the I guess the optics of things, the way that it looks to the eye does not compare at all from 20 years ago to today for most things, except for these Harry Potter films where the CGI really holds up.
Yeah. Well, you know what you could, if you're looking for a blast from the past, you guys could always watch Blast from the Past together.
We could. I'm hoping that when she's a couple years older, we'll get her to Scrubs. But movie wise, I don't know for sure, because I've sat her down with stuff that I thought for sure she would enjoy, and she didn't even like Casper, like just a wretched human. So
I rewatched Casper the other day, and I liked it better as a kid than I do now.
oh yeah,
Which I guess should be true for a children's movie, but I think so fondly back on that, and I was like, oh, this drags a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I brought her back. I tried to do Hook. I tried to do Jumanji, all that stuff, and she wants Kevin Hart for Jumanji, not Robin Williams. And so clearly, I failed as a parent. You know, it happens, but we'll get there.
I mean, I'm kind of with her on Jumanji, so. No, the wonderful thing, and it's a credit to you and Lauren, and also a credit to Zoe herself, but she's got such a big personality, and she is who she is, and that's awesome. Having like seen that from afar. I mean, the nights we've been filming something and she just kind of hops in, and she's Zoe. She's Zoe 100% in those moments. So it doesn't matter that she's never met my brother and I in person. She's just going to be herself on a video with us. So,
and to be honest, that's why I don't try to stifle anything. You know, she wants to watch something, she wants to read something, she wants to be involved with something. I'm not one of those parents who goes over everything with a fine tooth comb. Like, to be honest, she knows herself and she knows what limits she has. And there's times where she sees something on a video or a TikTok, she's like, Dad, I don't think this is okay. And so we block content, you know, like I don't take credit for that. I think it's just who she is as a human, and I have full trust in her. So we're going to explore, you know, whatever avenue she wants to explore. And it's kind of cool having a kid like that, where I really don't have to be all that concerned, and I can focus on the positives and the good times and making some memories.
okay. And I know a lot of parents who are either at the situation where they have to figure out how to approach the Harry Potter conundrum, or will be soon. So do you have any advice for a parent that's wondering how to broach the subject of JK Rowlings and Harry Potter?
I think you start backwards. You know, I think you start with who your child is as a human, who you hope they become, and, you know, just discuss the value of humans as they exist, as opposed to the negative optics of what's being said and the message she spreads. And the doubling down is what really gets me. It's not the initial thought, it's the doubling down, just how bad it's gotten, and kind of wearing it as a badge. And I've tried to approach, and you know, my ideology, I hate any divisive stuff. You know, it's not for me. I'm all about, you know, humans being humans and being represented and all that stuff. And so I don't focus on the negative side of it, of these people think this. I focus it on how we should approach people and how we should interact with others. And, you know, if you do that, they're going to be okay regardless of what the material is. You know, there's times where she sees a commercial on TV, or she hears something, or somebody says something on the bus and she comes home saying that wasn't right. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so I try to encourage her to have that dialogue where you don't just have to suck it up. You don't just have to accept that it existed. You can have that dialogue, because sometimes somebody doesn't know better, or sometimes somebody doesn't know of a certain experience. And I think that's much bigger than trying to say, like, shut somebody down completely. Where, yes, I've had this mindset of I don't want to give JK my money, and I will always have that mindset. But I'll never tell Zoe, like, you can't read that book because it wrote it. But I want to have a discussion of how to treat people, so that when you see this person that you might idolize, you can separate what they did as opposed to the awful things they spread and believe in. And I hold that way with everybody. I don't believe in this whole like just accept the art, not the person kind of thing. But I believe in, there are things in moments of time that occur, and we accept those things. Music, movies, those sort of things, without knowing where it's coming from. Imagine all the people in the 30s, 40s, 50s who were just shit humans who drove the entire industry. A lot of that stuff steered where we are today, and much was problematic as we watch today. But it existed, and so it's having that conversation of what's right, what's wrong. Can you separate it? And if there's conversations that need to have it. But I'm not going to tell you she can't read a book because of how shitty the person who wrote it is. I mean, there are probably people on a certain spectrum that think I'm a shitty human. That's cool. But if they want their kid to read something I wrote, awesome. So it's very nuanced talk. I've never done the baby language stuff. I've never done the like, let's just listen to kids' music stuff. She was listening to, I don't know, young Jeezy and Boys to Men at the age of like 6 months. So it's, she was raised on Wu-Tang. I don't believe in sugarcoating things. We've had those honest discussions quite often. And the sense of intrigue of a young human is far greater than we give them credit for, because we try to dumb it down, we try to water it down. But in reality, they can have those conversations, and you're not pushing it by having it. If they ask questions, answer them. And to be quite honest, my 9-year-old child doesn't know about what JK Rowling has said on Twitter. She just knows that she wants to watch this wizard with a CGI scar on his forehead from a movie interact with people in a book. So
a scar they hid pretty well throughout most of the movies.
Yeah, I think there's a time and place for the conversations.
Yeah.
She heard me drunkenly talking at a party about how I despise the Harry Potter franchise because of it, and we had to talk as a result of that. But had that not occurred, she would have watched these movies, she would have enjoyed them, she'd read the books, would have no idea, and she didn't have to have an idea at that moment, because that's not important when it comes to the story in the movies, but it becomes important later on, I believe. So, it's just, every parent's different. I firmly believe in having whatever conversation my child wants to have in what I deem an appropriate manner. So we're all going to handle it differently, but don't do it with white gloves on. Just take gloves off and have those talks.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think what you said about like just having those conversations, Harry Potter is going to come up for Joe and Amanda sooner than later. And I'm not worried at all about how they're going to handle it, because I see how they are raising their girls, and they're raising their girls to be good people. So that'll be interesting. I think it really helps in the whole Harry Potter thing is that, yes, some of the adult character cast has come out in support of JK Rowlings, but especially with the big three, they all became pretty great human beings.
Yeah.
I think a big credit to that is you were talking about the things you hear about Alan Rickman on a set, and all three of them say such wonderful things about Rickman. So I think it's wonderful that those three became great people, and most of the young cast did. Like, they grew up, I think, in the same way as so many people our age and younger grew up reading them and became better people because of it. That cast played it and became better people because of it. So
I think, I like that as a takeaway, because it's a middle finger to the person who wrote it in some ways, but also a credit to the fact that, we're so quick to say, like, screw this person, get him out of here. But if it brought that, among others, unintentionally or intentionally, whatever it was, through craftsmanship, it's not something to ignore. I know a ton of people who are fully into it, who are great humans, and could give two shits about what the person's doing now as opposed to the experience they had, because it was so transformational for them. So it became easier for me to accept. It's more when, like, I feel like I can take something, but when I'm pumping my money into it, that's where I draw the line, because I don't want somebody to profit off of their shit, but I'll gladly, engage my daughter what she wants. So that's where I draw the line, kind of thing.
Yeah, it feels like, not that J.K. Rowlings is a better person than the people behind Chick-fil-A, but it is different to consume Harry Potter than it is to eat a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. So
I've boycotted spending money on each for my entire life, so I'm content with that.
And much so, thank you so much, Dan. I hope everyone's enjoyed it, hearing you talk about this as much as I've enjoyed talking to you about this. A conversation we've been having, honestly, for a while, and probably will continue to have as well. But
yeah.
Now, do you have any plugs for the folks as we get out of here?
Fellow YouTubers, Gary B, the casual comic guy, he's just an amazing human. As we talk about a parent, he's such an incredible parent to his kid. He's got his own channel, and he's trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. He's doing a fun giveaway. My channel is actually pitching in for the giveaway to throw some stuff in too, and he's got other channels involved. He started a Grow Together initiative on YouTube where basically he promotes different channels each week, hoping to get them to a certain number of subscribers, and they do giveaways and stuff. Just such a great guy. Go to his page, check out his giveaway. On my page, Out of the Panel Comics, check out what I'm giving away in his box. Some good stuff, and he's got some other mystery stuff. And for some reason, Gregory, toyshnip.com brought me on as a blogger. And this is where you'll see all my pop culture stuff and ideas and takes. And it's mostly informative, not really opinionated, because to be quite honest, the culture of pop culture has just gotten so toxic where opinions reign supreme instead of becoming dialogue and discussion. And it's just so, it's disgusting. So
I feel called out since I have a pop culture newsletter that's just all my opinions, but
no, but it's not God, even when you look at the talk around the Eternals, which Greg and I will get into next week on No Coast Defenders, or 2 weeks from now on No Coast Defenders.
Actually, it is next week because this, I mean, for the people that don't know, we are recording this on the 8th. It's not going to go up until the next Thursday after this because I've got another one in the can. So it will be next week. We're talking about Eternals because we will have returned already, folks. So hopefully you listened to us 2 days ago on No Coast Defenders talk Venom and Shang-Chi. So
yes, and just hearing I'm glad that this blog came along when it did for the pop culture stuff, because watching the shit surrounding Eternals is just blowing my mind in terms of how toxic every angle is. So as a sneak peek, I was called a homophobe because I critiqued the movie when my only critique was, well, we'll get into my critiques, but the only scene I actually liked was the one where two men embrace and raise a child together, pretty much. So but the automatic take, because I didn't give it a 10 out of 10, was that. So pop culture needs some rescuing, and it needs just some straight reporting. So when you look at my toyshnip.com, it's legit just straight reporting on what's coming out, what to expect, collectibles, comics, movies, music. This past week I talked about Elton John collaborating with, I think, 24 artists on his latest album from all different genres. So a lot of stuff to.
After his retirement tour that took 7 years, he's released an album in classic artist fashion.
Yeah, classic shit. So it's just fun stuff. Check it out. It's actually a new local company to Rochester where they have toys and collectibles, but we're trying to be bigger than that, have some pop culture references and latest updates to get you away from the they shall not be named for me, we got this covered kind of stuff, but it's the actual reality of here's what's coming, here's what's going on. So check that out, and always check out Gregory's cool points as well. I think I forgot to share it last night because, well, we all know what happened with the Green Bay game. So Gregory, thank you for having me, my friend.
No, thank you. Also, a suggestion is one of the things you should be giving away is you should have flying disc with me just doing this.
We might be able to make that happen.
Or not. I mean, I'm all about those best 3 run t-shirts.
What's funny is so many people said can't find work, nobody wants to work, whatever, all this stuff. And I reached out to 26 designers and graphic designers in my area to make us stickers, shirts, all that stuff. 0 replies. So if you're out there and you want to do something, I'm ready to pay, I'm ready to hire, ready to make it happen. T-shirts, stickers, whatever, for Battle of the Ballads, whatever we're doing. It was an initiative I was hoping to do so that all proceeds would go to this woman who's helping her daughter with some really severe medical issues, and 0 replies. So if you're in, I'm ready for you.
I mean, you saw my attempt at logo work, so I'm not the guy to help you.
No, I just thought it'd be a hit. I thought it'd be a no-brainer, but what can you do?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dan. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.